we started showing that something that takes 2 days, you can finish in like 2 minutes with AI. And then even if you spend 15 minutes checking it, that's significant amount of speed.
Welcome to Builders, Budgets, and Beers. I'm Reece Barnes, and I started this podcast to have real conversations about money in the building industry, the wins, the mistakes, and everything in between. I believe builders deserve to feel confident about their finances, and that starts by hearing from others who've been through it too. This industry can be slow to change, but the right stories and the right tools can make profitability feel possible. Let's get into it. All right, Deepti, mics are hot. We're recording.
Wonderful. Let's get rolling.
Let's get rolling. Really appreciate you jumping on Builders, Budgets, and Beers. And super interested to tap into your mind just regarding specifically AI estimating and takeoffs. But before we do get going here, I always like the guest to introduce themselves to the audience. Just a little bit about yourself, your name, your background, how you got into the space, just some of the basics. And we'll start there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today, Reece. Really appreciate it. Yeah, my name is Deepti Yenireddy, founder and CEO of Boon AI, an AI agentic platform for pre-construction. Prior to this, I used to lead product at this company called Samsara. They're a leader in IoT for commercial fleets. Construction was a pretty big customer segment of ours. So got to work with a number of customers across various industries. And the fascination with AI for physical things has always been there. I was a founder before Samsara as well, focused on AI, but the challenge of applications of AI in the physical world is much harder than software. So wanted to do something there. So started Boone as an AI platform for the physical world. And, just given how construction is going to shape the next phase of our world and also AI in general, it's a full cycle. AI creates more demand for construction. Construction helps enable AI. So yes. That's basically what got me in here.
I love it. Okay, so and you made a comment that applying AI into the physical world is much more challenging than software. Break that down a little bit more. Like, what are the challenges you see? What is the big challenge there?
Absolutely, I think it all starts with data, which is the first and foremost. So, how do you capture things in the physical world accurately and at scale? For AI to have that data set to work off of. I think that a problem starts right there. Construction is also so specific, right? You can find a lot of data on, tons of videos out there, like horses galloping in the wild and so on and so forth. There's movies and content. But within the world of construction and just spatial intelligence with buildings, there's limited data. We haven't always been structured in designing buildings, capturing that data, making it available worldwide for other things to function. So it all starts there. And then the second thing is, obviously, we had a major revolution 3 years ago in AI with GPT. These are visual models in the sense that, we go back to traditional computer vision models rather than LLMs in general. So being able to tie all of those together to solve that problem makes it harder. And, founders never learn. You always pick the hardest problem to break your head on. So that's what fascinates me about the physical world.
Totally. Okay. So it's I see it every day at Adaptive, right? Is like, how do you take all of the data from an extremely manual and difficult to gather information industry like construction is, and then actually put that together into a meaningful workflow or piece of software that uses AI to augment those processes. It's a huge challenge, but there's a lot of compelling solution out there. So tell me a little bit about Boone. And I've done some research on your guys' website. Obviously, know it's AI estimating, takeoff, stuff like that. But what specifically are you guys doing, and how are you applying AI to the pre-con workflows.
Absolutely. And yeah, you are probably living this at Adaptive in terms of data challenges. So I'm glad
Totally.
we can connect on that.
Hey, we're in the trench together.
Yes, love that. Love the company. Yeah. So what Boone does is we are in AI pre-con platform. So right from when a pre-con team gets a project from their customers, including plan sets, specs, etc., evaluating that, identifying risks, identifying conflicts, to helping them take off the project, which typically means you're measuring everything within that project. So in the case of architectural, it's measuring linear footage of different types of walls, flooring finishes, or structural steel, concrete. In the case of mechanical, it's sheet metal, which is measured from ductwork and so on.
Hmm.
But yeah, Boone does it for pretty much all trades. We specialize obviously in mechanical, electrical, structural, but
Okay.
also, in general, contractors world, structural, concrete, steel, as well as architectural. And
Hmm.
then taking it to the next stage in terms of um, creating an estimate by applying different types of cost codes to it, but also across stages, right? Right from conceptual design to schematic design development and construction documents. So at conceptual stage, there isn't much of a plan set. It's like artist rendering. So
Sure.
using AI and historical data to help them create that. And then finally, bid leveling and dealing with vendors, and any sort of revisions and addendums that come with it. So end to end, within the pre-con process,
Hmm.
we basically enable them. And in the last month, we released an agent as well. So an agentic approach that connects all their data, but also connects the Boone platform to
Okay.
give them AI employee or AI estimator that they
Totally.
can chat with and get the whole thing done.
Okay, that's beautiful. Okay, so and then you mentioned even just about like the different subcontractors, and you guys are focusing on HVAC, but you also do GC. Like where do you see the big differences in those types of estimating patterns and pre-con patterns that you're applying into Boone? Like what are the big differences?
Yeah. Where do I start? It's like,
It's not just estimating, right? It's not just estimating is estimating. There's all these nuances. What are some of the nuances?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the GC world, you're getting involved very early. So early stage where you're discussing how to build with the owner
Hmm.
itself. So we see a lot of early stage conceptual drawing. So here, the power of the product or the power of the workflow is in how well are you able to use historical metrics, benchmarks, etc., in order to be able to build an entire estimate out of nothing, right?
Yep.
So that is on the GC side. GCs also majorly deal with architectural, structural, so more concrete, steel, finishes, facades, etc.
Hmm.
Because those are the things they mostly self-perform. And on the subcontractor side, because their margins are so thin, accuracy is really, really important for them.
Totally.
And typical subcontractors are HVAC or mechanical, electrical, which is pretty hot right now given the data center boom.
Hmm.
Um, and then plumbing, steel, and so on and so forth. So different things that they care about, but at the end of the day, everyone is measuring and estimating.
Totally, totally. Okay, and you keep mentioning like the historical data side, and then even from the initial comment of like the challenge of applying AI into the physical world. Like, how do you how does Boone actually gather that information? Like, is it from like integrations? Are they uploading plans? Is it harvesting from somewhere else? Like, how does the information and historical data actually get into Boone? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts off with integration. So we connect with their existing systems. That creates the simplest and easiest way for the user to give
Of
us data
course.
rather than have them go fish for tons and tons of data.
Hmm.
Everyone uses some system to begin with, estimating software,
Sure.
and we integrate with most of them. So once that is there, we know. what the estimate is, line by line item,
Mhm.
also where is it at, what type of a building is it, and when was it built, etc. All those factor into those historical metrics,
Mhm.
and we pull metrics out of it in terms of cost per unit of measurement. And once those are in place, then they can be applied to other future projects depending on the type of building, submarket. Like, hey, is this a hospital versus a high school or elementary school, and so on. And those come together. Um, the other aspect to construction is the physical aspect. And we put in a lot of effort into this, Reese. And the effort we put into this is, you need a lot of data to train the vision model on. And
Sure.
there's only so much data in the world, right? So we've started investing in like creating synthetic data based
Okay.
on principles of construction. And that is basically, one huge gift, from our technical team to us in terms of like that vast set of data, because the more we have of it, we actually can train and produce better accuracy.
Okay, I'm going to need you to go a little deeper on that. Okay, so getting you're creating synthetic data. What do you mean? Like, how does
Uh,
that work?
yeah, totally. So if we think about how many buildings there are in the US,
Of course.
let
Okay.
alone the world, and how many plan sets, it's finite, right?
Sure.
uh, and what does AI need in order to produce extremely high levels of accuracy? Millions, billions, or trillions.
Yeah.
It's just, we've kind of felt that it's impossible if we just rely on real world data in order to create that scale. So we understood that, hey, we need to make up data in order to train AI.
Okay.
We need to make that data up in such a way that, number one, it is realistic. Number two, it's teaching it the right things. For example, it's able to detect this component, right? Like that means we need to generate multiple samples of those. And then it also needs to reflect real world building code and conditions. So, you know, what what code compliance does hospital need versus like a high school or a data center, and
And that
using all
can,
makeup data.
of course, and that can vary by like county and
Yes.
state and city and all. So, okay, so did you take like all of the code from like all the counties or however that works and then plug that in and then like are using synthetic data around that, like forecasting what code's going to be, or is that like the pretty rigid part?
Yeah, we are still working on it. This is like, I mean, it's going to continue for as long as we exist. It is a hard, big, major problem, but
Of course.
definitely codes for sure. But also, um, the bigger problem is, hey, architects, designers have an unlimited set of templates. They make up a new plan set, a new symbol, new design each time. So that I would say is the more infinite set, and much more harder. Code compliance, like, AI can very efficiently, gather all that data across various counties and keep modifying that. But yeah, definitely all this goes into the concept of creating synthetic data.
Totally. Okay. Well, and I think even to that point, so there's a lot of actually, how about before we go down this path, because I do want your take on like how you see AI impacting the workload in construction. Like, I think there's a lot of concern around AI is going to take my job, or like there's going to be just like robots and AI and all this stuff doing everything. So I want that. But first, like when you were talking to customers, what were some of the bigger problems that they had? Because I feel like a lot of stuff we've been talking about has been pretty technical. But like
Mhm.
when you're talking to prospects and customers, like what were some of the just the big pain points that they were coming to you with that you guys started making these decisions on where to go and how to start building solution?
Yeah, totally. I think estimation in general is a very time consuming process, Reece. So any project takes max minimum few days
Mhm.
to few weeks, months sometimes,
Sure.
right? And estimators are very high valued. I don't think you can find them easily anymore. You can hire an estimator that easily.
Well, and it
Uh,
goes back to your point of like it in the estimating, it relies, or the estimate is contingent on the outcome of the margin, right? And with a very slim margin business, that just emphasizes the importance of it.
yeah. And if we think about a world that was like that probably a year ago, now the data center boom,
Hmm.
even the top five hyperscalers are already spending $500 billion just
Insane.
this year alone. It's insane. Like, where are all those people going to come from, right?
Right. Right.
So, yeah, and we are seeing customers like crunched on timelines. They're like, "Hey, we need to submit this in the next week, next 2 weeks." All of them are working weekends, evenings, and all of that. So um, that is one. Then the second pain point is obviously when you're crunched, you're not getting into that much detail,
Sure.
uh, right? And of course, you want more business. You want to leverage this feast mode, right? As one
Totally.
customer called it that, and you want to make sure your business grows. And we came across customers who wanted to double their revenue in a year, right?
Right.
And when does that happen in construction, right? That is so resource intensive. Um, so I think it started off there, and then those were some of the things we started showing, that something that takes 2 days you can finish in like 2 minutes with AI. And then even if you spend 15 minutes checking it, that's significant amount of speed, right? So
Totally.
that's basically what we are looking to solve. Yeah.
Didn't you just have a LinkedIn post about one of your clients that I think they ran like a takeoff on their phone? Like it was like multiple documents and pages and stuff like that. And they were just able to do it in like minutes.
Yeah, so this actually talks about our latest release, which I mentioned. It's agentic, and we named this agent Gandalf because I'm a huge Lord of
Gandalf.
the Rings fan. But you can call it whatever you'd like. So this agent, once you put Boone's capabilities into a Slack or a Microsoft Teams,
Okay.
and then combine it with integrations with your data source. Basically, you can get Gandalf to do what you want, right? So this particular estimator basically said, "Hey, review the project, pull the specs." Identify conflicts, and then go start measuring feeders. And he's an electrical estimator.
Hmm.
And he did that all on a Friday evening on his couch while he was with his family,
Yeah.
in a span of just back and forth with Gandalf for, like 3 to 4 hours. That's it.
Right. Right. That's insane. Well, and I think that goes back into like the question I did want to ask, which is what is your perspective on AI impacting the workforce? But I think that you kind of answered. I still want your perspective, and I want your opinion on how people should view this topic. But I mean, largely, I mean, we've got labor shortages, right? People aren't going into the space fast enough, and with that skill set that is going to make them valuable. And then the second, you've got a huge boom, a huge opportunity, which is needing more people that don't exist. So it's obviously it's pretty clear that it's not going to be taking jobs; it's just going to be filling a huge gap in what doesn't exist today. But I think like you being, a co-founder of a tech company, obviously a very, very long tenure in software and seeing everything from, you're at the beginning of your career to the big AI boom that's happening. How do you explain, adopting AI to people that might not be super on board with it or are concerned that it's going to eliminate jobs and, take people out of the workforce?
Yeah. Great question, Reese. And I'm sure all of us are answering this question at least once a week, if not more.
Right.
My philosophy has always been we humans are remarkable creatures, right from industrial revolution to digital revolution to AI. We've basically become so much more sophisticated as a result. And I truly believe that we will continue to become more sophisticated. Heck, Gandalf is automating most of my job, and I love it
Right.
because it leaves me more time to think and do different things. So I would say, estimation or in general construction, like we will become more strategic and
Hmm.
as a strategic advisor stakeholder with AI doing the mundane work. Like, in an instant, this year, I think we all became managers, like, suddenly because we manage AI, right? We manage
Totally.
agents, we get them to do work. That's how I would see it. Where we get AI to give us that incredible speed, right? Like it gives me, or it gives our customers from 1x to they're going to 100x, right?
Sure.
Something that would take days, you get in seconds.
Right.
I think there's tons of value in that. But at the same time, estimation is such a highly skilled job. It's going to be very hard for AI, along with the spatial intelligence data constraint, to come up with something that an estimator as a strategic advisor to AI
Right.
would make them redundant. Not now, not in many many years.
Okay, so and that's I think the big piece is like I think it's this timeline that the call it the consumers, right, are kind of a question, which is like how fast is AI going to develop and then how long is the human going to be needed before they're just like obsolete is some of like the big, BuzzFeed headlines are like suggesting. But no, I think that essentially like what you're saying is AI is just eliminating the manual tediousness of the task that ultimately creates barrier and timeline for the individual to get what they actually want, right? And it's at the end of that, it's like in with adaptive, right? Like we automate the AP expense receivable workflows, right, and then feed that into better reporting, applying agentic AI to get people to the reporting that they need to use critical thinking and their experience and all of the other context and variables that they have to make better decisions faster to be more competitive. I don't
Absolutely.
know.
Exactly like you said. I don't think Boone is any different from what Adaptive is doing in, helping all CFOs, controllers, basically become better strategic advisors to their CEOs as well as their boards.
Totally, totally. Okay. Well, and I think you mentioned like for years to come, like humans aren't going to be obsolete for years to come. This is like kind of a crystal ball question. But like how do you see people like do you think we're still going to have, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that are going to be like employed and working or do you think that there's going to be more people that like don't have to work if they don't want to? What do you think about that stuff?
Uh,
Again, this is total crystal ball. This is total crystal ball.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's such a hard question because my perspective changes every week based on what new AI capability I discover. Right.
Yeah.
Um, I think I don't think we found a solution for the physical world problems just yet, Reese. I think that's going to be the hard part. So all like journeymen, all tradesmen, I think that's going to be the hottest space for the next few years. The care industry, caregiving industry, nursing, service industry. I think this is going to be, you know, something that AI cannot automate for many many years. So
Yeah.
we will continue to exist. We'll just do different things, I guess. And interpersonal skills and trust building, like just the way you and I are chatting. I don't think we would do a podcast with an AI agent and enjoy it as much.
Totally, totally. And there's like even speculation around that of like AI creating content, right? I think it was maybe like a year ago or a couple years ago. I'm not a big like TV or movie consumer, but wasn't there something about like the Actors Guild or something like that being concerned about AI taking over and like cloning essentially or mimicking the people that are producing
Right.
content and removing it? It's kind of like that. It's like how like AI can create the perfect movie. It's like that's never going to happen. Like I think there's just so much of an emotional connection there, and it's kind of like everyone was worried about what's going to happen with the Industrial Revolution, right? And like even just like the creation of vehicles and cars is like it only made everything better. Like the fact that you can drive to a hospital or if you're in a rural area and you can get to a like an urban community to get needs like basic needs that you have, that was a win for society.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure we all want to see Brad Pitt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We want to see Tom Cruise in a movie, and
Yeah.
knowing that he performed that stunt, and didn't use CGI, like it makes a whole lot of impact. So, yeah, I'm with you there. And, like even our discussion here, the personal connection, knowing like, hey, this is Reese and this is what you talk about and this is what you like, that means so much. I don't think AI is going to get there anytime.
Totally. And I think there will be like a moment of rejection. And like I think like the human race will be that judge, right? Of what are they willing to tolerate with AI and what are they not willing to tolerate? Because I think to your point, it's like when you do say that with like bringing like a Brad Pitt in, or even just for like technology or in a construction company's sense, there's something to be said about the how miraculous it is when humans build these massive structures or they accomplish these massive feats. Like that's kind of what motivates people to do more and push more and do better. So
Yeah, and to your point, I think uh, Claude or Anthropic is working on defining what ethics or rules AI should follow, what it should do, should not do, by consulting the Vatican and others. So, very we are living in very interesting times. I'm so happy to be alive right now.
I actually haven't heard about that. So they're consulting the Vatican about this. Did I hear you right?
I heard a little bit about this. I'll have to albeit I didn't dig in too much into that, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised that they would want to think through and basically define what this looks like. I mean, we don't have any regulations or legislation around this, right? So what can AI do? What it can't? What should it be doing? What are the principles that it should be guided by?
Right.
So, yeah, to your point, right? Like, should AI videos of Brad Pitt be in movies, and will consumers be happy with that? I'm not going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
It takes away from it. It takes away from it. You want that human accomplishment as like the as a component of the entertainment. Whether it's just
yeah.
like
There's a legal aspect to it, and there's a consumer aspect to it as well. Like, what do consumers want? Yeah.
totally, totally. And I think like it's the obvious with like the movie conversation, but again, like even just going back, it's like it's incredible when you're talking to an estimator with 30 years of experience and all the different contexts that they put together is like that's who you want on your team. And I think that's where this like the line gets blurred of like if you give everyone call it a 30-year estimator in the form of artificial intelligence, like is it really even that competitive anymore, or does the human actually catch up and they're always going to be a little bit more ahead because of the critical thinking and context that humans run with? I don't
Yeah.
know. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think so far I'm in the other bucket where I feel like, again, we are so remarkable. We'll find something, we'll find
Totally.
something else that can be done better. And I see that with estimators, right? Like most of the time they think about, okay, what is, how should this project be done better, right? What's
Right.
value engineering in this project? They don't need to be measuring every beam, every column, but that gives them time back to think about, okay, how do we build this more efficiently? So I'm still a big human fan, as you can see. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. Okay. And so just I'm curious, just talking to estimators and you're working with people that are applying AI into their workflows. For the people that aren't applying AI into their estimating takeoff workflows, what is your advice to them on how they should be considering AI, the tasks that they're doing that they should be augmenting with AI? What is your just general advice for someone who's not using this type of technology in their estimating and takeoff
Yeah.
process?
No, I think so. I'd love to bring along a little bit of a personal take on this, mainly because
Yeah.
I've been a founder for many years, and one of my roles as a founder is obviously to build one of the best engineering teams possible.
Mm-hmm.
And engineers are, interesting, and again, remarkable people, very similar to estimators, right?
Okay.
So 3 years ago, when OpenAI came out, yeah, I could see like the reactions to it from engineers. Very skeptical, always focused on accuracy. And that has changed so much from the best engineers 3 years ago being like best architects and someone who can write as much code as fast as possible to now problem solvers, right? Like you
Totally.
problem solve and get AI to do the work for you. So you're best prompters of AI as well. I would say estimation is going to go through the same journey, just like any industry would.
Hmm.
Uh, and that would be something I would tell estimators who aren't yet using AI that yes, the focus, while on accuracy, it's about the immense advantage the speed gives you, right?
Hmm.
What you can do in 2 weeks, you can do it within mere seconds. And basically, even if you review it, and that's what I would say, like, the next phase of estimator skill set should be how are you going to use AI and review to get that speed advantage? Because if you want to bid on that data center really, really fast and win it against your competitors, then AI is the one that sets you apart. And some of the builders, like, hyperscalers like Amazon, actually want construction companies to share their AI plan. So it's a
Interesting.
full circle where their own customers are pushing them to use AI. But yeah, the best way to use it is, try it, try it, get your hands dirty, review it, and see what it does well and what it
Yeah.
doesn't well, so you know where to step in.
Okay. Well, so now the next part of that question is now that's why they should, but from your side of things, why don't they? What do you typically hear people push back on when, you've got, like, obviously you've got the conviction, you could maybe call it biased, right? Because Boone's your baby, right? And you spend all this time in it, you believe in the technology, but why don't estimators take advantage of this? You mentioned accuracy, I get that, but like, why don't they?
Absolutely. So I think it's also a bit of what they've been exposed to, right? Construction is it's a very different space, and most of the AI tools that these people use or used in the past is ChatGPT, Gemini,
Right.
and so on, which are LLMs. Without a whole context of what is the building, what is this measurement, what does it look like. So there's genuine skepticism, right, coming off of those in their experiences of those in terms of, hey, this hallucinated, this wasn't accurate. So I totally believe where they're coming from. I think, turning that skepticism into investing a little bit of time and using AI when there are 14 bids due,
Mhm.
when construction is going through a boom, is also hard for them as a stakeholder, right? Um, but it's really important in 2026 to take 30 minutes out in order to enable yourself with the latest skill set and
Mhm.
try it hands on and check it to build that trust. And the key thing to do is, generic tools are not going to have the same impact in construction industry, as I'm sure you would agree,
Mhm.
Reece, even with financials, right? Like
Totally.
generic systems just don't do the job. Uh, but being able to try out a few specialized systems and then build trust in them is the best way to go. Have
Totally.
you experienced the same?
I was literally going to say that was the piece that stuck out to me. Stood out. Stuck out is so hard to get over. It stood out. That was the piece that stood out to me. Was you're essentially like explaining what vertical, like why AI and vertical SaaS is taking off right now, because you're focusing down on the subset. Like I think of an open AI or like an Anthropic or whatever as like the horizontal product, right? Like it can cover a wide variety of things, and those models are getting trained on so many different components of data. But then when you do look at a Boone or you do look at an Adaptive or you look at any of these other vertical SaaS AI native products that are focusing on a very specific set of data, they're able to remove and eliminate those hallucinations. They're able to get you that accuracy. But then you also get just like the general functionality of the product is so specific and intentional to what the task is trying to get accomplished. That's what we see. Is it's not like you can, I mean, I would be lying if I said I tried running a bill through chat GPT and seeing how it job costs it. But essentially, it's like when you're doing this over billions of dollars of transactions over and over and over, and you're seeing all the job costing and how it's working and doing these things, that's where the large language model in the specific business is helpful. So I totally agree. I hear it all the time. And it's AI. I think the other point I wanted to make on your comment was AI is moving so fast, like
Mm.
it adaptive in the last 3 months, 4 months, the ability to actually apply agentic AI and have it be accurate is really like the timeline that this has been. It's like we're talking a quarter,
Yeah.
right? And we've got people that are making decisions saying, yeah, I tried AI in the past, it hallucinated, or, I've tried this stuff and it's just not quite there, or I'm using a horizontal product that say they have AI in it and it doesn't really work. So I'm still a skeptic. It's like AI is moving so fast and it's iterating and it's getting better at such an incredible speed. As a consumer, obviously I'm biased, I'm in the tech world, but you can't afford to keep that line of thinking. You can't say I tried it 6 months ago and it didn't work, because this technology is getting better so fast that you really do need to build it in. Like you said, 30 minutes a day, that might be obnoxious to evaluate tools. But the point is, like, you just need to stay on top of it and see what's out there, because the application is real.
100%. Yeah, like I said, I feel so lucky to be alive right now because every task I do every day, 3 months ago I used to do these tasks. Now it's completely automated. All the top 100 construction companies are strongly pursuing AI initiatives.
Totally.
We are in discussions with many of them as well. It's moving faster than we can possibly imagine. Yeah, I'm excited.
Totally.
Obviously biased.
Yes. On the top 100, I'm hearing the same thing. And we've built a pretty big business on the small to medium business sized contractors. We've been exploring going more mid market and enterprise, talking to these larger organizations. And when I talk to our SMB clients and our prospects, and they're asking, like, what are the bigger contractors doing? They're making such an investment, and they're going down to their leadership team saying, start evaluating these tools and start finding products that we can become AI partners in. That's what we're hearing. I'm curious to know your thought or what you're hearing, but it's that AI partner is the big term. They're looking for the vendor, for the AI native company that can come in and actually assist them in applying AI into their business, because everyone's got Copilot, everyone's got GPT, they're all using it. Yes, it's helpful. Yes, it's cool, but you've got kind of a business world that's scratching their head saying, like, what is this actually doing for us? So what we're hearing from these larger contractors is they want someone to come in and say, how do we get these agentic workflows in place into our business to actually start seeing these results? What are you hearing?
Yeah, very similar to you, Reese. Yeah, I think people are dealing with consolidation in terms of different teams buying different things. That is one we hear a lot about that from innovation stakeholders, and then there's the operational stakeholders who care about their particular workflow and something that works for them. So I think over time both will have to converge at some point of time, but this is going to replicate the same engine as software purchasing, right? Like,
Totally.
again, yeah. So you have one cloud vendor or one vendor for the big things, but each team will have to have something that suits their workflow, which may not be a generic LLM tool because it needs to integrate with their workflows, perform their actions highly accurately. In the case of adaptive, it is, hey, like the numbers have to be extremely accurate for it to be
Totally.
trustworthy. So, yeah, that's basically what we are seeing as well. And it differs from team to team, as I'm sure you're aware as well.
Totally. Totally. Okay. Well, so one last question here, and you can take a second to think about your answer. But just after having built Boone, worked with prospects, worked with customers, put a lot of time and thought into the estimating world, takeoff world, how AI fits into it, what is the one piece of advice that you would leave the listeners with for them to think about, to consider, to make themselves better?
Great question. Let me take a second to think about that because, I don't get that question on a day to day basis.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, I'd say maybe, um, because this discussion is so friendly, Reese, and it's so easy to talk to you, I'll probably come at it from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say um, the one advice I have, not just for listeners but myself as well,
Hmm.
it's a very strange world where things are changing to a point where we can't predict even 6 months from now, where technology is going, where industries are going,
Hmm.
and that the only thing I can control is my pace of learning, right?
Hmm.
And our pace of learning. That's mostly what we can control. So I'd say, yeah, keep that learning curve going, whether it is new technology, new method of doing things, new research, or, just keeping on top of what are the best practices in industry. I think that's the only constant thing, especially when things are changing so much, to um, I'd say keep that pace on par with AI space.
I love that. I love that. Keep the pace of learning. And frankly, like I think that's just like a good theme for this conversation, right? Is everything's moving so fast. The solutions are definitely getting there. The application of AI is becoming easier and more thoughtful as we go on. So you can't stay on top of on top of these massive booms that we're seeing if you're not keeping up with your pace of learning. But Deepti, I appreciate you so much for spending time getting on the podcast. I love digging into your thoughts and perspective on how AI is coming into the estimating and takeoff world. But we'll stay in touch. We'll have to get together sometime. I'm not out in you're in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, I'm actually in San Jose, which
San
is
Jose. It's just
uh,
south, right?
yeah, 1 hour south. But Reese, such a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and it was so fun talking to you and fielding interesting questions that I haven't been asked before.
Yeah, there we go. I appreciate it. Well, yeah, if I'm ever in the Bay Area, we'll have to get together. But I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you as well.